Hi, everyone. Welcome to the virtual road trip for November. I'm Pam Brandon, and I see participants getting on, and so we'll let people get comfortable and give it a few minutes as people start joining, but we're glad you're here. Hard to believe that we are now in the 11th month of 2020, and we have actually made it. And we will make it through the rest of 2020. We all know we will. Seven and a half months into this world that we never thought we would be in, but we are here. So I had a webinar last night and I said, we've made it and we will make it through the holidays, and we will look at 2021 at some point, looking back with a whole lot of memories and a whole lot of stories, and we can certainly say that we were courageous, especially so many of us, you all, who have been taking care of loved ones and residents and clients, and a lot of heroes this year. So I see it slowing down a bit. So let me go ahead and get started, because I've got a lot to talk about and a lot to share with you. I'm really excited to be the host this month. For those of you who have been following us this year through the virtual road trip, thank you so much for your attendance. We have really expanded our network this year. We are going to do the virtual road trip into next year because it's been very successful. We've had tremendous feedback. For those of you who are new, again, I'm Pam Brandon. I'm the president and founder of AGE-u-cate Training Institute. And if you are not familiar with our organization, just a little bit about us. We develop and deliver aging and dementia training for professional and family caregivers. Our training transforms the attitudes and actions of caregivers, thus improving the quality of life for our older adults. We're very passionate about our programming and the type of programming that we have developed and who we partner with. And it's very unique, very innovative. Our programs include Dementia Live, our simulation program, Compassionate Touch, which is our skilled touch program that reduces behavior and reduction of antipsychotics. We have our Flashback, our fun and engaging reminiscence activity program for people of all ages. And then Ageless Grace, who we've been partnering with for some time, our brain and body fitness program based on neuroplasticity. And our newest collaboration with Reading to Connect, which is a very innovative reading program for people living with dementia, people with really, again, for all people. And I encourage you to poke around our website and look at these programs and look and see what might interest you for your organization. But I want to tell you, get right into straight talk and tell you that this has been a passion of mine. I have wanted to bring back family caregiver education for many years that we have been busy developing programs. And so for me to get this started again and debut it with this hour that we have together is been something in the back of my mind. And what better time to do it than during a pandemic when everything changes. So, it is really my passion to really use this as a platform where we can bring together family caregivers and providers and listen to each other and talk about the things that are tough, talk about the things that need to be talked about, so that we can all do it better together, so that we can understand as providers the needs of families, and families can better understand what the needs of our providers, our aging services providers, whether it's community, whether it's home care or hospice, or you're a community-based organization. I think it's about bridging those conversations so that we all understand that families need the services of providers and providers need families. So we both need each other. We just need to do a better job of meeting in the middle. And I think we've done a fabulous job this year. If it's ever been a year where we have been able to look at the reality of what's going on in our world and have to say, wow, there's some things I might be able to improve on, but hey, give all yourselves a pat on the back for what you have been doing. So, because I think it's been absolutely tremendous and inspiring to hear the stories of what families and providers have done to adjust in a very short time. We know we're not done with COVID. We know we're in the midst of it, and it may get even a little bit worse. It probably will be this winter, but we've got some hope in 2021. So let's start those conversations and let's see where it can go from here to help us. As we know, November is Family Caregiver Month, so awesome time to honor and celebrate our unsung heroes. I mean, all of you are heroes out there, but families especially, who the theme this month is Caregivers in Crisis. And what a perfect theme for what you have dealt with this year. Whether you're 24/7 caregiving, whether your loved one is in community, whether you have care coming into your home. This has been a year where a whole lot of people out there have given 120%, and you're not stopping. So we should be honoring you every single day, but this is the month where we can really stop and say thank you. So this is a good time for me to learn a little bit about the participants who are joining us today, so that I can speak a little, know about what side of you are from. So I'm going to set up this poll, and I'm going to ask you to just tell me if you are a family caregiver, if you're an aging services provider, or other. Through this year, we have just grown our network tremendously. And I see that this is about the mix that I thought we would see. So great. This is a great starting point for me and will help me in my discussion with you. So I think we've just about got it. Let's see. Polling in progress. We'll give it a few more minutes, and then I'll show you what our poll looks like. All right. So I'm going to end it so I don't see any more coming on. So share results. So we've got 84% of us are aging services providers. Not surprising. There's about 8% on family caregivers and 20% on the other. So this is, again, about what I thought we would see, and that gives me some good direction on the conversation I'm going to have. So hopefully you don't all see that poll on my screen. Just get rid of it. There we go. Okay. So, a little bit about me, for those of you who don't know about my story and how I got into this space. Probably not totally unlike many of your stories. It was personal. I want to introduce you to my sweet mom, Jeanette. Here she is. This picture was taken in 2005. And in 1998, my mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. This was after 6 years that we had been, and she primarily had been caring for my father, who had Alzheimer's disease. And so it was just a few months after my dad had passed away from Alzheimer's disease that she was diagnosed with Parkinson's. So our family was already trying to come to grips and dealing with the grips of Alzheimer's and, of course, the death of my dad, and worrying about my mom so much as his primary caregiver. And they, by the way, lived in Chicago and I was in Texas. And so I was the youngest of five, long distance caregiver, and had during that time become very, very involved in their care. Not identifying as a caregiver. Want to preface all this by saying this was 20 plus years ago, and when all this happened, I was in my early 30s, more than 20 years ago, with young children. So I was sandwich generation, and gosh, it changed my life in so many ways. I became a 15-year caregiver. My mother passed away in 2007. And so being a family caregiver, dealing with family relationships and sibling relationships and all the complexities, it really did change my view of what I needed to do moving forward with my life. So from there, I had the opportunity to go on to work professionally in developing and delivering family caregiver education throughout the North Texas area. Met with thousands of caregivers, family caregivers. I worked with hundreds of organizations over the course of many years. And while AGE-u-cate has transitioned into professional caregiving, our programs all have a family caregiver component. That is a must for me. That is a requirement that all of them have that. And the reason is that I know the desperate needs that family caregivers have. So I speak to you today from having walked the walk of being a family caregiver and being on the other side, and then transitioning to being on your side as well as we work with so many providers now. So I hope that this perspective helps you to understand where my passion comes from and where my seeing it from both sides now comes from, and seeing the need to really relook at things. So I could probably fill up the next, certainly the next hour, the next 2 days if we had it, with talking about a few of my challenges, but let me just go into just a few. I chose just to share about 10 of these, maybe a few more, of my personal challenges going through my 15 years as a caregiver. One, role reversal. It's not natural. It was never natural for me, and it was heart-wrenching. And as heart-wrenching as it is for children of adult children of parents, it's even more difficult for them. So that, the challenges that we often hear with older adults of being stubborn, they're just, quite frankly, they are trying so hard to hold on to any independence they can. And that stubbornness that we hear from family and professional caregivers, that's simply why. They want to be as independent as they can. That said, it was never easy. I didn't self-identify as a caregiver for many years, probably 5 or 6 years before I actually realized I was a caregiver. Again, there was so much less information. And back then, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have access like we do to services. That said, I think we've gone to, we still have access, and we still have caregivers who don't identify. It's really important to identify as a caregiver in order for people to help you, in order for people to accept help as caregivers. They have to first identify as one. So that was one of my challenges. I was just daughter that loved her parents and was wanting to do the very best to help them. I felt guilty most of the time for not doing enough for my family, for my children, for my husband, for my friends, for my parents. And I often told families, this is just the side benefit. It's the added benefit that you get as a family caregiver. You get to feel guilty all the time. So know that that's probably a cloud over your families that you try to help. I was not prepared for the roller coaster ride of the complexities and ever changing situations and emotions and the strain it would put on relationships. Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, many other, especially neurological diseases, are very complex. Um, Healthcare is complex. Medications and all the side effects that comes with the medications cause so many changes. And it truly is an emotional roller coaster. I desperately wanted education, support, and resources. And I thought it would come from the healthcare community, the community um, that I was, dealing with when she had to be hospitalized, when she went into skilled nursing. My mom had a lot of specific um, challenges that were Parkinson's related, that were quite rare, sent her into skilled nursing quite a bit. She was in independent living, she was in assisted living, many different care environments, having home care. I wanted education and support. It was hard to get that. So all the education I got, it was my initiative, not only on the diseases, but on how to deal with the challenges I had emotionally as a caregiver. I was being very assertive myself. Not all caregivers are that way, but I will have to say I was thankful that I did that because it did help me in my self-education. That said, navigating healthcare, long-term care options, managing all the medications, knowing how to be a patient advocate, it was a gigantic job in itself, huge. That has not gotten easier in the last 20, 25, 30 years. It simply hasn't. All of those things, if anything, have gotten more complex, as we know. Um, Worrying about tomorrow was sometimes crippling. Um, as much as we know that we shouldn't worry about tomorrow, caregivers worry about tomorrow a whole lot. They worry about, what if this happens? What am I going to do? What is the situation going to look like? Oh, anger and fear often overtook clear decision making. Um, and and for those of you who help family caregivers, you know this, that often if you're fearful or if you're angry about the disease or the situation at the time, it's hard to make those clear decisions. We need people who can help us and guide us. Things that I did know, and again, I go back, it was 15 years of caregiving. So a lot of what I was learning was over years. It wasn't over months, certainly not over days. It takes a long time to learn about Parkinson's and learn about the healthcare system. A lot of the things that I knew very well, I would often forget under stress or when I was exhausted. Um, and those particular times that I can look back on were times when um, she was hospitalized or she was in skilled nursing. Times that were particularly stressful for me because I also had a family, and so I had lots of other duties in my life. Really important for healthcare providers to understand that the stress and exhaustion a caregiver may have at that given moment may put them in a different place than they normally are. I had to learn to accept that others were not always able to step up. That comes under the category of family drama that many of you have to deal with. Um, Look, I have had many years of not only families, but talking to our providers now and being able to have that open conversation and say, what are some of your biggest challenges? And 9 times out of 10, what I hear back from providers is it's families. And this is why, and that's not to say that they don't appreciate families. It's just this bridge that we need to do a better job of understanding the side that each other is on. I had never heard the term caregiver martyr until I realized that I was one of them. I could have been a poster child for caregiver martyr, but I was one of those caregivers that if I came into your community, you would probably roll your eyes and say, oh my goodness, she thinks she can do it all, or she has done it all. She's a wreck, but she has done it all and been a bit of a control freak. So she's going to be one of those bigger challenges. I was that person. And when you're a caregiver martyr and you take the whole world on and then some, you do no one a favor, but you definitely are not a favor to an aging services provider who wants to help you, because you have to dig through a lot of that and help that caregiver release some of that control so that you are able to help them. So I don't like statistics in particular, overall, because there's so many who put statistics out, so it's hard to kind of get the right statistics. And it doesn't help. We all need to deal with our own communities, our own organizations, so that we can move forward and do better at what we do. So I don't want to be bogged down on statistics, but I want to spend a minute or two with just why is this such a big deal that we talk about families? Well, almost 20% of the US population is providing care for a person who's 50. So we know it's huge, it's growing. As we're becoming an older aging society, we know all these numbers are going up tremendously. 41 million US adults are caring for an older adult, and 32% of these are themselves older adults. Caregivers are getting older because their parents are getting older, their spouses are getting older. As we know, moving into the average age of moving into assisted living, or independent living, and then assisted living, those who are going into memory care, that average age is getting older and older by the time we are seeking care. So it's important to understand that as we see family caregivers getting older, their needs are going to change. We need to be able to adapt to that. We need to be able to go on their journey with them as they're aging as well, and understand where they are. We are going to witness through 2030, just between 2012 and 2030, 18 years, a 41% increase in the number of persons over 65. We're all marching in that same direction, this whole baby boomer group of getting older and needing services. We're starting to see that wave of the oldest baby boomer needing more and more help and services. By 2050, 30 million of us will be over the age of 80. And that's alarming. And it is why we need to have this straight talk, these essential conversations to see what we can do better in helping each other. Family caregivers are and will remain, even more so in the future, the backbone of our long-term care system. We need family caregivers as much as they need our services. They remain the backbone, the greatest number who are caring for older adults by themselves, loved ones by themselves. They are often expected to navigate complicated, often overwhelming healthcare and long-term care services with little or no education or guidance. Folks, that has not changed. We hear the same things over and over. And caregivers are often overlooked and ignored by providers, not because they mean to, but because they just are. We need to dig into that. Yet in theory, they are included. We need them as part of the care team. We can do a better job caring for our residents, our clients, when we include family caregivers in our caregiver team. But the question is, are we doing a good job at helping them be a part of that caregiver team? I think that's an important topic that we need to dig into as well. So in just 2016, just 4 years ago, the need to recognize and support family caregivers is among the most significantly overlooked challenges facing the aging US population, their families, and society. I look back again in my years, over 25 years ago, when I was a caregiver, these things were still, these issues were still prevalent, and they are today. So what's our year been looking like? We've been making strides with families. I'm sure many of you as providers have, you were on a roll with maybe your family caregiver outreach programs and your support programs, and, hopefully having intentionally looked at these and how are we going to provide more resources? How are we going to build that engagement and relationship building that we need to with them? And maybe some of you were feeling really great about that. And then COVID hit. Wow, our world turned upside down in a matter of days. And all of a sudden, we had an infrastructure within our communities, within our own organizations that quickly needed to change. And for good reasons. We needed to protect our residents, our older adults, our clients, our community seniors that we were serving. And those changes needed to happen. And so what happened to what we were doing before? Well, a lot of that had to be pushed aside. But certainly I think that we've also looked at this time, and hopefully where we haven't had maybe time as teams to sit down and say, what have we learned? We need to be doing that. We need to be saying, what is it that we're taking away from this that will help us do better going into 2021? We know that we're going to have still some tough months in 2021. Hopefully by mid-year, we're going to see some of this change, but we're going to have a fallout from COVID, the fallout of isolation, the fallout of deaths, and supporting families through their loved ones having COVID. We've still got months ahead to deal with this. But I always want to say, what are we going to learn from this? How are we going to look at this time? Are we going to look at this time as half empty or half full? Well, I think we can be realistic and say, we got to accept that we've had a lot of really tough times that have hurt us as a business, hurt us, been tough on our staff, been tough on a lot of things. I mean, first you have to look at where we've been, but then can we rethink what we're doing to educate, support, and provide resources and engage with our families and build better, authentic relationships with them. We need to re-examine what we've done in the past, what we did this year, those things that worked well and those things that did not work well at all, and then retool and be able to move forward with doing it better. So I chose to take the top 10 needs of family caregivers straight from the non-expert. I always tell people I may have lived this personally, I may be doing it professionally, My master's degree was on-the-job training. Luckily, our team has much more education than I do in many cases who develop programs, but I came from the passion. That's how I got into this. It was really hard when I sat down to write up this, to develop this program for today, to determine what the top 10 were. I kept lots of notes from all my years of working with families and, journaling and all kinds of, uh, note taking and whatnot. I looked back on that and it was really doggone hard to come up with top 10. It would be much easier to come up with the top 50 needs of family caregivers. That said, I will remind you again that this was not taken from statistics. This was taken from me looking back on the work that I did and from the conversations I have with leaders and providers, our network of partners, and so it's not anything that is anything but from me and from the non-expert. No one is an expert in family caregiving. If they say they are, I would doubt that because it's just so complex. And there are just so many issues that we need to help families with and things that are new and changing all the time. So I'll start with the first one. And this is what do they need a provider to know? What do they want you to know? And one would be, please be patient with me. Chances are very high that I am an emotional and physical wreck by the time I come to you and am seeking your services. We need to understand that when they come to you, they have not, 99.9% of the time, they are not just preparing their current healthy parents for when the time comes. Life doesn't happen that way. My favorite piece of advice for family caregivers was you have to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, because life is never plan A. So if they're coming to you and they're kind of a wreck, there's a reason why. They've probably been dealing with this for months, if not years. I'm going to check something. I see that my picture is not up there. Van, do you know what? Hopefully you can all hear me and we're not dealing with that. So what I'm seeing is not my picture, and that's fine. It's the AGE-u-cate logo, and I don't know how that happened, but I'll keep talking. Second is, please don't overwhelm me. There are a million things I need help with, but what I really want you to do is just really help me today with my most urgent issue. Listen to me. As providers, are we doing what we should be doing in I'm having a hard time on my screen. I see there's questions. So Van, I'm going to ask you if there's chats in here, if you will address that, or just let me know if there's anything I need to address.
Well, everybody's chatting in to say they are seeing you fine.
Oh, okay. Well, it's weird. I'm seeing different things. So that is great. And by the way, what I didn't mention to all of you is don't hesitate to chat in your comments, questions. This Straight Talk is about what we want to hear from you. So if you have questions that you want us to address, you can do that in the Q&A and we'll address that at the end. But we do want your input. So please don't be shy. So going back to that, don't overwhelm me. I think as providers, we sometimes feel like we can be of help to somebody by just doing a knowledge dump. And that's the last thing caregivers need, because if they are coming in to seek your services and they are overwhelmed, they have urgent needs. Take that slowly. You will build more authentic in long-lasting relationships if you start slowly. So I'll ask you, are we training those people who are is that first line, that first line of communication with family caregivers? Are we giving them, your staff, the tools to have those listening skills, to be empathetic, before just being that person who gives them uh, information that they may or may not need or want at that moment? I don't know what you know. I simply don't. I may know some of it, but again, if I'm coming in and I'm stressed, I maybe have forgotten it. So just remember, I'm not a professional that has had training in maybe even the basics of helping my loved one. Um, at the same time, don't talk down to me. So if you listen to me, you'll get an idea of where I am. So it's a balancing act here. I need to know a whole lot more. I don't want to be talked down to. I'm in that really fragile state. And this could be a deal breaker on whether we're going to have a relationship here, because how you make me feel is really important. And I know I don't know as much as you do. And you know probably that I don't know as much as I should know. And that's just the way it is. Having another person care for my loved one is going to take a whole lot of trust on my part. I may not be able to express this, but when it comes down to it, I want to be able to leave my loved one in your care and know that she or he is respected and loved when I'm not there. I cannot express this enough. When it finally came to the point where we had to place my mother in a community, that we were no longer able to care for her. She needed nursing care. She had many complex issues, and her Parkinson's had progressed quite a bit after she had broken her hip in 2005. Was the picture. She was in her wheelchair by then. That said, we had looked at many communities, and we had looked at lovely decorated communities. We had looked at beautifully, beautiful amenities, and it was that gut instinct that I kept going back to. I was fortunate; I had my sister who lived near me, and so we were making that decision together. But it was that gut instinct of, when I walk out the door after spending time with my mom, will I be completely sure that she is respected, that she's loved? I know that it's not going to be perfect. I was savvy enough by that time to know that things happen in care communities, that it's never going to be perfect, that I wasn't perfect, far from it. So I was savvy enough to know that. I did not expect perfection on either side or anything near that. What I wanted to know is that she really was going to get the love and respect and care that I would give her while I was not there. And that was that gut instinct of feeling like the people who I was basically interviewing, did I have that trust in them? That was super important. And it went beyond what the community looked like. Obviously, we were looking for a community that had nice amenities and all that, but we definitely felt in some communities that we didn't have that trust, even though they might have been prettier or had more amenities. So authenticity and transparent were important to me. They are important to every caregiver that comes into a community or seeks services, that they know that you are doing what you're doing because you care. And I have to say, I think one of the greatest things about working in this field is you get to work with people who are caring people. Not everyone is like that, and they usually don't stay in the field, but um, what I think is important for both sides to understand, this would be very important for caregivers to understand from their providers, is that there's so much stress on both sides. And if we haven't seen that during COVID, we've never seen it. I mean, exhausted staff giving, 200%. And, just the stress of caring for many different residents or clients with many different chronic illnesses and diseases. So there's lots of stress on both sides. That said, um, being authentic and being transparent about situations should be on the top of the list for both sides, so that you can have a real relationship. I know my loved one better than you do. This again, wow, this is a loaded conversation. Um, this also can come into that category of a little bit of where caregiver martyrs get themselves in trouble. I know my loved one, I know what they want, I know exactly what they need, and I expect this, yada yada. It goes on, the conversation goes on. That transition to being a part of the care team, transitioning to putting them in your community, or with your, entrusting you with your caregiver to come in my home, that giving up control is tough. It is never easy. That is going to be a rocky road on both sides. But what is so important is that you can get through that rockiness and hopefully smooth out the caregiver martyr role, if that's what you've got going on in the family, and they can begin to talk. Because as we know, a older adult who's in care may act differently with families than they do with your staff or with your caregiver in their home. They may communicate differently, and so their needs are going to change. And I think this again is that relationship building that is really so important, that is going to help your business. If you can do this, it's going to help you in doing the right thing and meeting your mission as a business. And it's going to help your families by being able to get through this period of, yes, you may know your loved one better than you do, certainly when they move into community, but they're going to change, and they're going to, we might know a few more things that you didn't do well, or that you didn't know that they needed when they moved into community. So again, this is a topic that could be an hour long just in itself, that we will probably be talking about at one point as we move on with Straight Talk. Grief and loss often overwhelm me. Watching my loved one decline chips away at a piece of me every day. I talked about the guilt, the cloud of guilt that caregivers have. The other cloud is grief and loss, especially if their loved one has Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or ALS or Huntington's or MS, or a myriad of diseases that can really it's that slow decline, or it's those sudden jumps of decline, and then they even out. It's just very hard to see. So when they have transitioned to your care, they're not seeing that as much, and so that can be alarming to them. It can be frightening. It can cause alarm of, what are you doing to my loved one? Why all of a sudden have they changed? And these things need to be talked about. They need to be able to be shared. What's going on, and are we doing that well? Or can we do better? How can we do it better? It is a lonely road being a family caregiver. I'd like to connect with other family members or other family caregivers. I want to connect. I want to be able to talk. But that the solution there may not be just, I'm going to post a family caregiver support group meeting once a month. The question would be, is the person who's leading your caregiver support group, do they know how to facilitate a meeting? Do they really understand the needs of caregivers? Are they good listeners? Do they know how to build a community together? What does that look like in keeping that community connected when you can't meet in person? Now through Zoom, we have lots of opportunities to do even more because so many more people are used to virtual communication. So again, I think one thing that COVID has taught us is that we have more opportunities to engage with families that they're going to feel more comfortable in communicating with because it's become natural for them. And then please help me find joy. Handle with care should be plastered on my forehead most days. But I do want to look back and be able to treasure these moments, to be able to pat myself on the back. I want a cheerleader who can say, I'm doing a good job. I'm not perfect, but I'm doing the best I can. And I want to create these memories and I want you to help me because I don't know how to do this very well all the time, or maybe at all. So how can you help me create these moments of joy? And I think this is where we're doing such a great job as aging services providers now, and the options now with engagement. And we're looking at engagement as being not just our resident engagement, but including the families in some of these wonderful, innovative activities and therapies that we have to bring families in to keep that relationship between their loved ones going and maybe even stronger. So those are my top 10, and again, please chat us in your top 10 or yours other ideas that you have that you would like to see us talk about, because past the pandemic, which hopefully in 2021 we're going to be able to see we're past it. We're going to have more challenges ahead. As I said, we're going to have the fallout from COVID. We're going to have dealing with the isolation issues and those that have we've seen behaviors get worse. We've seen a drop in functionality. We've seen the depression. We've seen, as I said again, the fallout is going to be complex, and it's going to be building up our staff again, looking at all of the infrastructure of what we had to give up with our communities and our organizations and what we have to pull back together. So I think it's a good time for us, even though we're in the midst of this of COVID and looking ahead at the next few months being really, really tough, that it's a good time for us to start the straight talk. So it's about how can we make it better and make it better together? How can we understand each other better so we can do this caregiving better together? So I want to ask if anybody's got some questions or chats. We have about 10 minutes, but we won't take any more time than we need to. Van, do you have some questions that have come up? What I love is for any of you, especially since we have so many aging services providers, your topics that you'd like us to talk about next year. And by the way, Straight Talk will not replace the virtual road trip. It is going to be in addition to the virtual road trip. So we will be seeking your input, just like we do in our program development. We're going to be seeking your input for this because the goal is, it's not about us. It's about you. It's about us coming together to solve some challenges, to be innovative together, to empower each other, so that you know, in the end, we're making a difference, and we're making a positive difference. So Van, do we have any chats out there?
We don't at this point.
Do we have any questions from anyone?
No, we don't. You must have covered things really well.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I hope this has been enlightening. As I said, as I was doing this, I changed, I kept, you know, up until about 15 minutes ago, I was still changing things, but because there's so much that we have to talk about, because there's so many issues, but I truly look forward to building our community of family caregivers on this so that we can have authentic discussions together. And here's my contact information. I really want to hear from you about what we can do together to build this. I want to bring other leaders in as well. So it's not going to be just me talking. It's going to be probably lots of guests that come in that will be able to add to this discussion. And so I will end with this by saying thank you to every single unbelievably heroic person out there who has made it through November. We wish you the best in getting through these next tough months that we will have. Whatever we can do to support you, we want to do that. And know that we just, we want to look back on this time with you and know that we've all learned from it and can move forward from here and be empowered. So thank you all from very, very sincerely from me for joining me. And I hope that we will see you in January as we kick this off, and reach out to me directly, email, phone, would love to have a conversation with you. And so with that, I will let you go back to work and about your day, and wish you a happy Thanksgiving to you and your families, and please stay safe. And to all your residents and those you are caring for, stay safe and well as also. So thank you.